morning. Good morning and welcome to the Ventura Center for Spiritual Living. I'm Reverend Bonnie Rose, and here we are together on this beautiful day. For those of you who were concerned about the hummingbird that was in the Stanley's Hall, it flew out and it is free. We prayed about it and it went away. Yeah, all right. All right, let's stand up and we'll sing together our congregational song, Peace Like a River. Breathing in, breathing out, allowing our bodies to become still, to be held and nurtured in our chairs. And as we relax and let go, we experience a softening of the hard shell that we carry around us at times. And we just let go, knowing that we are safe and loved here. And as we let go, we open to receive. And we start by opening to receive the words of our sacred reading.
From It's All God by Walter Stark. We are promised that one day we will realize that we are made in the image of God. And we spend our whole lives searching for what that means. When that day comes, we will understand that because God is infinite and all-inclusive, so are we. We are so used to thinking of ourselves as being what we see in the mirror that it is difficult for us really to be aware that we are microcosmic holograms of a macrocosmic, infinite, inclusive beingness. As infinity represents total inclusiveness, and infinity can't exist minus anything, once we learn to think and feel inclusively, we will realize our oneness with infinity. And we too will no longer need to exist minus anything that we need or imagine. We have it all. And so it is.
And so it is. And so let us continue to breathe and let go and to fall into God, falling into that place of surrender where we recognize our oneness with the I Am presence. As we sing the words, I am remembering who I am, remembering collectively for ourselves, but also for every single person sitting in this room, and then reaching beyond the walls of this room to remember for the entire world, the entire universe. Let us all remember together the presence of God that made itself manifest in us, through us, as us. And resting in that beautiful, beautiful essence of spirit. That spirit that has given us everything. Let us breathe in deeply. And then as we exhale, we gently open our eyes, loving what is as it is, and so it is.
Good morning. It's always a blessing and a pleasure to be before you all. Before I sing, I would definitely be remiss if I did not mention that we are celebrating the birthday this weekend of Dr. Martin Luther King, as well as the 50th anniversary of the Civil Rights Movement. Which was certainly very important, and without which I don't know if I'd be standing here in front of a room, in front of all you lovely white people. Therefore, before I go into my first song, I'd like to sing a little bit of the what we call the Negro National Anthem, which goes, lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven rings with a harmony. liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening sky. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has brought us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of the new day's begun. Let us march on till victory is won. So for peace everywhere, imagine there's no heaven. I wonder if you can. No hell below us. I wonder if you can. Imagine all possession. I wonder if you can. No need for greed or hunger. A brotherhood of man. Imagine all the people sharing all the world. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. No, no, no. I hope someday you'll join us, oh Lord. And the world will be as one.
Thank you, Andrew. So beautiful. Thank you. So, my goal today is to help you fall in love with your life. No matter what's going on in your life, there is the capacity within each and every one of us to be deeply and powerfully in love with this beautiful thing that we call existence, which is the life of God in material form. How cool is that? So one of the tools that I'm using to get us to that place of falling in love with our own lives is in this talk today, and it's about motivation, holy motivation. And I threw in a Batman, holy motivation, Batman, in the talk title, because I'm a child of the late 50s, 60s, when, of course, the famous TV series, Batman, was on, and there was holy whatever, Batman, every single episode, right? I actually Googled that. I Googled Robin, holy, Batman, and there are people that have made a study of all of the holy things in Batman. People that look at them for the various inner meanings and innuendos, and there's a list of over 100, I don't know how many, probably 200, 300 of Batman's Robin's holy exclamations. I'll share a couple of my favorites with you. Holy hamburger, Batman. I like this one. Holy hole in a donut, Batman. This one is bizarre. Holy sudden incapacitation, Batman. And this is my favorite because it's the weirdest one. Holy priceless collection of Etruscan snoods. I had to look up what actually is an Etruscan snood. Sounds kind of nasty, doesn't it? Well, a snood is like a hairnet. It's a decorative hairnet. So those of you who might have sung opera, or Barbara, who's a costumer, might know what a snood is. It's a decorative hairnet, and Etruscan, it refers to an ancient area in Italy that became Tuscany. So it's kind of like holy Italian hairnet, Batman. Oh, but this talk is not about Etruscan snoods or hamburgers or holes in donuts. It is about motivation, holy motivation, Batman. So I'm asking us this morning to take a close look at what our motivation actually is. Why do we do what we do? And is our motivation a source of stress or a source of joy? Because I have observed in the past week of working with this topic that the way that I am approaching any task, doesn't matter what the task is, but the way that I respond to the task internally can create stress or joy within me. And for all of us this morning, and I hope you're with me on this, I'm choosing joy. I'm choosing to learn how to approach anything with a sense of joy and love and freedom, and to allow the tasks and the duties and the business of being human in this divine world to fill us with that life that we love and that sense of joy and peace and happiness. Todd mentioned that we're teaching from this book this month. It's All God, The Flowers and the Fertilizer by Walter Starkey. It's a good book. And in this book, Walter Starkey, the author, talks about that his whole life, he is no longer living. He passed away in 2000 and something, and he was in his 70s. And he said, kind of like Edwin Gaines, he felt like he was just getting started, and there was still time, and there's all kinds of great stuff still for him, which is true for all of us. But he said in this book that his whole life was a quest for this insatiable desire to know what God is. But he wanted to know what God is without being dismissive of any of the human elements within him. He wanted to find God, but he also wanted to celebrate his humanity. And then one day on the rim of a volcano in Maui, he had a revelation. And in this revelation, he learned that in order to experience a transcendent non-duality, we have to learn to love an apparent duality. Does that make sense to anybody? I hope so. It means that we have to love the human and the divine in order to experience the divine that embraces all of it, to experience and express and love the wholeness that embraces everything, the human and the divine. It's all sacred. It's all God, the flowers and the fertilizer. And he spoke of this revelation as the double thread, meaning that there is a thread of humanity and a thread of divinity, or a thread of spirit or a thread of matter, and it's all intertwined to form one. What we brought up in class the other night is that our very DNA is a double thread. It is a double helix. And so isn't it interesting to think about this idea of the one becoming two, of spirit and matter becoming one. Did I say the one becoming two? The two becoming one, spirit and matter becoming one. Isn't it interesting to think that that is part of our very DNA? That you were made for this. That you were made to have that transcendent experience of non-duality by loving the appearance of duality. Feels pretty good. And it's easy to talk about as a concept, but how do we bring it into our lives in a very real way? Well, of course, we all have the internet, and I, had just finished Googling all of the holy Batman things, and I decided to Google something along the lines of this. And I don't know what exactly I Googled, but I came up with a really interesting combination of divine and earthbound. Did you know that they have something that you can purchase, and it is a Jesus Mr. Potato Head? If that's not a combination of sacred and something else, I don't know what. But, they're both sacred, actually. I mean, the potato is very sacred, and I'm fond of Mr. Potato Head, as a matter of fact. But to take it away from Mr. Potato Head and still focus on Jesus, the master teacher, who we call in this teaching the Christ, or the Christ consciousness, the great example. Not the great exception, but the great example. Walter Starkey says in his book that the double thread is realized through the two main commandments of Jesus. Jesus, as you know, probably was not a Christian, right? He was a Jewish rabbi, and he was a reformer of the Jewish tradition. He put it together in such a way that he could understand it and that his followers could understand it. It's very similar to the way Ernest Holmes approached Christianity, right? Ernest Holmes, the founder of this religion, put this religion together in a new way, borrowing not only from Christianity, but from lots of other different faiths. But one of the things that Jesus did in his reforming of the Jewish tradition was to say that all of the law can be reduced to two commandments. And that commandment is to love God and to love your neighbor as you love yourself. And part of Walter Starkey's revelation on the rim of that volcano in Maui, when he discovered this idea of the double thread and duality and non-duality, that we appreciate this transcendent non-duality as we learn to embrace the appearance of duality, he said that it was all encapsulated in that one commandment, in those two commandments, that we love God, that we love the infinite, that we love spirit, but that we also have to love the material world. And the greatest form of love is to love God in our neighbor. And you know that our neighbor is everything, right? It's not just the people that live next door to us, or that live in our neighborhood, or that live in our street. Our neighbor is the rocks and the trees and the stars and the seas and the fish and the birds and everything. Our neighbor is that annoying person that we stand behind in line who's taking too long. Our neighbor is that person on the cell phone when we wish they would just shut up, right? That is how we realize the double thread, by those two commandments. Loving God in everything, and loving our neighbor. And loving ourselves, of course, because we love our neighbor as we love ourselves. Ernest Holmes does a good job of synthesizing this, too, in the way that we pray. If you have kind of noticed that there's a formula to our prayer, first we acknowledge that God is all there is, and then we acknowledge that I am one with God, and then we acknowledge that the people we are praying for is one with God, and then we speak the truth of spiritual existence from that position, that everything is one with God and everything is unfolding in wholeness and perfectly as it should. Okay? So that's the idea of the double thread. That's the idea of the commandment to love God and to love our neighbor as we love ourselves. But how do we really make that a reality for ourselves? How do we bring that into our lives in a very personal way? In this book, Walter Starkey says that there is a very, very, very simple way to do this. A very simple way to act as if the truth is true, to act as if it's all God, the flowers and the fertilizer. And he says it's so simple that we tend to miss it. The way to be in this state of non-duality, in the presence of the appearance of duality, is this, and I'm going to read the quote from the book. When the spirit in which you do something is more important than the results you wish to achieve, you are in a spiritual frame of mind. When the results are more important to you than how you go about getting them, you are material. It's that simple. it's simple. It's kind of unfortunate sometimes when I think about how much time I've spent focused on results versus what spirit am I bringing to this interaction. But that to me seems like a true key to happiness, is instead of focusing so much on the results, or what do I hope to get from this moment, or what do I hope to get down the line, is to focus on what spirit will I give to this moment. Will I address this moment with love? Will I address it with compassion? Will I address it with kindness? Will I address it with peace? Or will I address it with stress and worry and trying to make something happen? It's so subtle and so simple, like I said, that we tend to miss it. But it is an omnipresent opportunity to practice the presence of loving God and also loving our neighbor and ourselves. Because, like I said, it's all our neighbor and it's all ourselves. So, reading this quote and meditating on it and studying it caused me to look at some of my motivations, some of my, what I would call, everything's holy, but we are limited somewhat by language, so I'm going to call my unholy motivations, right? It's more like the motivations within me that cause stress. And I noticed 3, and I'm going to share them with you. There's probably more, and I urge you also to look at what motivates you in your life as I'm speaking. One of the things motivations that I've observed in myself that causes stress is when I feel like I am being motivated by a belief in scarcity. Me and the whole world, really. Much of the world is motivated by a belief in scarcity. But I noticed this in a very personal way when I came home from the center the other day, a couple of days ago, and I just had this overwhelming urge to clean out my refrigerator. And so I cleaned up my refrigerator, I brought everything out, and there was this bottle of salad dressing that I think has been in there since the 90s. And I, not really that long, but I don't really like it, but I managed to choke down about 3/4 of it, and there's just a little bit left, and I've been tempted to throw it out so many times because I don't really like it. But I go to this place of, well, I bought it and I paid for it, and it's wasteful, and there are starving children in whatever the country is now that we talk about. I don't know what parents say to their kids now. You'll have to get back to me on that. But just looking at that not wanting to throw something out because I bought it and I paid for it and it would be wasteful. And we have a worm composting bin. I could give it to the worms. They might jump out because it was pretty gross. But I did actually finally just break it down and give it to the worms. But I noticed it was such a great metaphor for me because it caused me to look at how much I do cling to, how much I hold on to, how many things in more serious areas of my life do I cling to because I have a belief in scarcity. And no need to raise your hands, but is there anybody here that has a similar belief in scarcity? Well, somebody in the back is raising 2 hands, but Does anybody here have epic things in their refrigerator, like 3 open mustards that you can't bear to consolidate? Okay, right. Yeah. So start with something simple. Start letting go of the mustard or the salad dressing or whatever and see where it brings you. See what spiritual place it brings you. Because a belief in scarcity can run you, but it doesn't have to. You can bring something else to that moment. The other belief, spirit that I tend to bring, motivation that I tend to bring to certain things, some of you will be familiar with this in me, but that is the motivation to try and control everything. If you can't put it on a spreadsheet, I don't want to do it, okay? I'm sure there are some exceptions to that, but we won't go into that at the moment. But anyway, if there is this desire to control things, and I think that part of that shows up as multitasking. Does anybody here multitask? Right? Does anybody here text and drive? Please say no, right? There's that famous sign from a Christian church, if you love Jesus, honk. If you want to meet him, text and drive, right? Yeah. I don't text and drive, but I do play beat the clock constantly. I put in some hot water in the microwave to make a cup of tea, and it's 2 minutes, and I wonder how much I can get done in that 2 minutes before that tea is done. Can I get dressed, cook an egg, empty the dishwasher, and feed the dogs in that 2 minutes? And it's kind of fun to try. And I know that probably a lot of you, like me, have epic to-do lists, and then you have sub-lists for your lists that are on Post-its, perhaps, that you get to cross off. And there's something so thrilling about crossing something off your list until that thing grows 6 more items, 6 more limbs, you know? But I think that that whole thing of trying to control the way that time is just that. It's trying to control. There's an adrenaline hit that you get when you cross something off your list or when you get a certain amount done. And there may be a more peaceful way to do life, to be in life. And so if that's your motivation, if trying to control life or trying to control time, right? That's what it's really about for me, is trying to control time. If that's your motivation, perhaps also that is optional. And there's something else that you can bring to those moments where you're feeling like you're trying to control things. And the other major motivation for me, and perhaps a lot of us, is approval. Trying to get people to approve of me, trying to get people to like me, trying to get people to think well of me, trying to get people to think that I'm special or wonderful or whatever the adjective is for the day. So those of you who are parents will probably understand this, and you know there are times when you have to be the bad guy, right? When you have to set down rules or uphold integrity, and that is sometimes not always met with shouts of delight and hand claps of glee, right? And I don't have children, I have dogs, and they're okay with it. But you know, in running a church, there are times when I have to uphold the policy, and people sometimes don't like it, and people get mad at me. And so I always try and act from integrity, but I do notice a lot of mental pressure that I put on myself, wondering or not this person is going to be mad at me, if this person is going to approve of me, is this person still going to like me? Am I going to be a disappointment to this person? So the question is that do you want that to be your motivation? Do you want those fears to be your motivation? Do you want to bring that energy or that spirit into what you are doing, or would you like to choose something else? Because certainly there is something else to be chosen. There is the whole array of infinite possibilities that is God, that you could bring into, that we can bring into any activity that we have. You know, Walter Starkey says in his book, this is harsh, but I love it. He says that there is absolutely no justification for a negative motivation. We try and justify it, don't we? We say, my life is stressful. I need to be stressed out because my life is stressful. No, you don't. No, you're making that up. You don't have to be stressed out because your life is stressful. And certainly, there are times for suffering, there's time for joy, there's time for sorrow, there's a time and a purpose for everything under heaven, but it's all optional. It's all optional. And I ask you again, as I often do, don't start with the hardest situation in your life and say, well, this doesn't apply because this situation is an exception. Start with the little things. Start with the refrigerators. Start with your to-do list. Start with the people that you're trying to get to approve of you. And see if you can bring a new motivation to those scenarios. What might those motivations look like? So if you're seeking scarcity, what if instead of bringing a sense of scarcity to what you do and how you are, you could just affirm, I am one with the infinite nature of the universe. I am one with infinite God. Infinite God is pouring itself through me in this moment. Infinite God contains all possibilities, all solutions, all answers, all grace. Infinite God is who I am right now, and I allow that energy to lead me. Thank you. I just heard the angel bells somewhere in somebody's cell phone. If your motivation is I love being punctuated by cell phones. It's very fun. If your motivation is to control everything, look at what you're trying to control. I'm often trying to control time. You may be trying to control something else. I would be a lie to say that I don't try and control other people and get them to show up like I want them to. That's another popular thing to control. But look at what you're trying to control. And instead, perhaps, of letting that be your motivation, perhaps your motivation could be something else. Something like, oh my goodness, I surrender. I surrender. I am ridiculous in this moment, trying to control the entire universe, trying to box with the entire universe, trying to wrestle it into my submission. So why don't I just recognize that I don't know everything? In fact, I know very little. And because I know very little, it places me in the position where I can trust everything. Wow. Oh my goodness, I hope another cell phone goes off after my third point. That would be excellent. If not, well, I'll have to sing a cell phone ringtone, okay? So you get that? Instead of trying to control, bringing a sense of control, a motivation of control to our moments, bringing the motivation of trust. I'm going to trust the all-sufficiency of God that is present in every moment, even the moments that look like insufficiency. I'm going to trust. And then the third one is the need for approval. So we're ferreting around, trying to get people to like us, trying to get people to think well of us, trying to impress people or to avoid being a disappointment to someone. What if we're doing all of that? What could we do instead? Oh, that's so awesome. Yes. Thank you. That's right, the law of three, right? The law of three, the Trinity, the triune nature of God has shown up this morning, and I say hallelujah to that. Oh, yes. Okay, so instead of seeking approval, what if instead we could know, I am so deeply and powerfully loved just as I am. I am so deeply and powerful loved that I know that certainly some of my actions have consequences, but no matter what, I am beloved of the universe. I am held in the heart of God. I am the holiness of God expressing in wonderful ways. You know, and the old religion in me says, oh, you're going to get all self-indulgent, you're going to get all egotistical, you're going to think you're something more special than everybody else. That's like the old voices in my head. But I absolutely know from experience, when I know that I am the beloved of God, it offers me so much more love that I can give and share to others. So instead of seeking approval, bringing that energy, that consciousness, that motivation to our acts, instead, we bring this deep and powerful knowing that I am the love of God right here and right now. And if we do even these three things or any other things that have come up for you in terms of what's your motivation and how we can shift that into bringing the spirit of good into our lives, life becomes one blessing after another. We find that we move through our day-to-day tasks of caressing our life, that people who show up that used to upset us or disappoint us or hurt us, that they simply become an opportunity to practice this deep love beyond logical love, to practice this deep understanding and this deep grace, this deep non-duality of recognizing, yes, you are God too. And in that way, scarcity is the new abundance. Control is the new trust. And the need for approval is the new love of self. That's what I'm talking about. That's the double threat in action. That is the two commandments of Jesus in action. Recognizing that it is all spirit and matter, and that the challenges in our life, the things that seem that they are outside of the realm of heaven, they simply exist to draw us into this deeper paradox of understanding that there is, in the appearance of duality, a transcendent non-duality. I'm going to close with one of my favorite stories, which is appropriate at this time of the year. And that is a story about an African-American man who was driving his car in the Deep South in the 40s. And a police officer pulled him over, and he said to him, and I don't like saying this, but I'm going to say it anyway. He said, "Show me your license and your registration, boy." And the man said back to him, politely and firmly, I am not a boy. I am a man. And until you address me as such, I will not listen to you. That gentleman, in his heart and his mind, knew that the spirit that he brought to that moment was far more important than the results, because anything could have happened. What did happen was that the police officer left him alone. But even greater than that is that his son was sitting on the seat beside him, and his son was the soon-to-be Dr. Martin Luther King. Dr. Martin Luther King, who caused us to lift every voice and sing, who caused us to take great strides towards justice. We're not there yet. But Dr. King, who also said that he stood on the mountaintop and he saw the promised land, and he didn't know if the results would happen in his lifetime, but it didn't matter. He brought the spirit of love and grace and driving out hatred with love to every moment of his ministry. And if he could do it, so can we. I have seen the promised land, and we are all in it. Let's go there now. Let us pray. So I turn within and recognize the grace and the goodness that is God, the power and the presence of love that is my life right here, right now, the power and presence that is the life of each of us. Together we recognize that this word that has been spoken has touched us in deep and significant ways, that there truly is this beautiful, transcendent essence of God, spirit in matter, matter in spirit, and that we are part of that glorious creation. We are part of that mystery, and we go forth and live as if that truth was true, because it is true. And so from this service today, I trust and I know deeply that we let go of motivations that no longer serve us, and that we invite the motivation of bringing joy and goodness and love and grace to every moment of our days, to recognizing that we are responsible for how we feel in any given situation, and to recognizing that when we feel like we can't change, there's something greater than us that moves through us, that we call upon and ask and seek and find this glory, this grace, this wonder, this love. I am so grateful for our spiritual work together this morning. I'm so grateful for the demonstrations of good that I know are forthcoming in people's lives. And I bless the spiritual center and every single person here today. I bless those who are not with us today, as I bless all paths to God, churches, temples, mosques, and ashrams. I bless atheists and fundamentalists. I bless everyone, for everyone is a blessing in their own unique and wonderful human divine way. And so in the spirit of that blessedness, knowing that we are so blessed, I say thank you, Spirit, thank you, God, and I release these words to the mystery. And together we say, and so it is.
I am a mountain, I am a tall tree, oh, I am a swift wind sweeping the country. I am a river down in the valley, oh, I am a vision I can see clearly. If anybody asks you who I am, stand up tall, look them in the face and say, I'm that star up in the sky, I'm that mountain peak up high. Hey, I made it, I'm the world's greatest, yeah. And I'm that little bit of hope when my back's against the rope. I can feel it, I'm the world's greatest.